Hi, everyone. In this special episode, we spotlight the transformative power of African women in the culture of giving. We discuss how their generosity not only nurtures communities, but also inspires global trends in philanthropy. Our discussion emphasizes the significance of investing in women, showcasing stories of resilience, mentorship, and empowerment. Join us in celebrating the spirit of hashtag Women Give as we highlight the role of African women in fostering a culture of generosity. Welcome to the Ubuntu Giving Podcast. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and happy International Women's Day. My name is Bitemi, and yes, we have a special episode today, a women-led episode by myself. And drumroll, there's someone in the building. Hi, hi.
Hi, Bidemi, Madonna here.
Yay! I am so glad we are doing this. I am so happy. In this episode, we are about to shine a spotlight on the ways that African women have contributed to and are transforming the culture of giving on the continent. Today, there are no guests or hosts on this particular episode, just a fellow colleague, two colleagues, two friends sharing their thoughts and experiences around women focused generosity. Madonna, how do you feel about this episode?
I am excited. Lord knows we've been cooking this for a while, so I'm glad that we get to do this together and share it with the world.
Me too. As you all know, we have a culture here at the Ubuntu Giving podcast where we do generosity exercises, asking our guests questions, about, generosity experiences. But this is a special segment because it's Women's Day. And with respect to the Women Give campaign, Giving Tuesday is gathering stories of empowerment, generosity, and impact from across the continent that celebrates women. We are calling on women to give voice, to inspire, and accelerate investment in women's futures. After listening to us share our stories, if you are interested in sharing a story, just send us a short video or a text that captures a bit about who you are, what you do. Tell us about a time a woman invested in you and give some sort of message motivating everyone around you to invest in women. Madonna is going to take a lead on this, by the way. Madonna, do you want to tell us about a time? Reflect on a time a woman invested in
Mm.
you.
I am reflecting on this for sure. And Bidemi, that's a really hard one, to be honest, because you know the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child, right? I'm not child anymore, just to clear that out. But it's hard to pick out just one woman. So let me just give this a shot. Um, Rona Sozi Carpenter is the first name that comes to mind. And I started out my legal career with her as my leader, and she was managing the legal department of the organization that I was working at. And while working with her, she kept prompting me to explore beyond the work that we were doing at the time. It was mainstream legal practice. And she felt that I could apply my law in more impactful ways at the time. So, unprompted, she got me into my first coaching program and paid for all of it. And by the time I was done with that program, I had decided to reroute and ended up in the development space at CivSource,
Oh,
where yeah, it's been quite the journey since. And again, I met Peace Kadondi, who was the program lead at the time, who invested her time to teach me all that she knew about philanthropy. And a couple of years later, here we are. And just one more, just because, yeah, it's really hard, this one. Jackie, Jacqueline Asimwe, who goes without saying is the CEO of CivSource Africa. And she has continued to give opportunities for growth, for reflection, to listen and ideas, all of which have shaped my experience and growth as a leader in the philanthropy space to date. So, Bidemi, tell me yours.
Ah,
Let's keep this a short. If you can just give one person strictly for this.
I know you now and I love who you are right now. So kudos to us
Oh,
women.
sweet.
Yes. Oh my God. Okay, I'm gonna have to talk about my mom. Hear me out.
It
I
goes
did
without
not
saying.
want it wasn't my intention to talk about my mom, but I want to for a
Yeah.
specific reason.
Hmm.
So growing up, um, my mom was quick to sort of teach us that schooling isn't necessarily education. So she really trained us on other forms of learning. And I'm talking about skills acquisition. At a point, I was learning how to sew, I was learning how to bake. Um, yeah, and we had the shop as well. She would teach me prices, she would teach me how to attend to customers. I feel like
Oh,
all of those things kind of shaped me into the kind of
wow.
person that I am now. Like the way I work, the way I
Hmm.
approach my work, it's because of her. She trained and instilled
Yeah.
this whole right, this spirit of doing a good work and doing it well. That's something my mom did. And I'm always grateful for it. I feel like it speaks to everything that I am now. When people work with me, I like them to feel as though I really contributed to that work because that's how my mom is. That's how she trained us to work. And that's how I like to work. And I also live that by this principle of doing unto others what you want them to do to you. So I do want people to take me seriously. So I tend to take them and their business and their ventures and anything they're doing to make the world a better place very serious. So that's one.
That's beautiful, Bidemi, and we get to experience the blend of all these things that your mother invested in you,
Oh,
from your creativity to just how you treat people, the customer care. It's still short to date, so
I'm
that was a
telling
good
you.
investment, mom.
Thank you. So there are a lot of women that have invested in my life, Matuna. And I think I want to talk about one person who I feel like investment in my life led me down this path, me being in the development sector. And that is Mrs. Ekpo. Um, I served in the brigade, 13th Brigade to be precise, in Calabar. And during my service here, everyone is expected to do something, give back to the society in some way. And I wanted to do something really meaningful. I wanted to give back to women, widows actually, of soldiers that had died as a result of the insurgency going on back then in the country. I wanted to do some sort of material relief to them, cervical cancer screening, reach out to kids, their kids, and students as well, all within, where I was serving at the time. And Mrs. April was so amazing. She connected me with everyone. She gave me access to anyone at all that would help make this a reality. And it was such a massive success. In fact, it led to, us, it led to me having certain friends. We are still friends till today. We'll still carry out community services once in a while. We still go to orphanages once in a while. I mean, we go to orphanages every month, to be honest. We had that community development service, and I just loved that sense of fulfillment. I could not find it anywhere else, even when I tried to work somewhere else. And I told myself, you know what? I think I need to find places where they're doing good. They're making some sort of impact. They want to make the world a better place. So I think Mrs. Ikpo's support, right? It gave me that confidence to want to do this and be who I am today.
It does make sense, Bidemi, and I love that she gave you the opportunity and it has since had a ripple effect, beyond just her one act of generosity. And I think it says a lot about what it means to invest in women, because investing in women will yield you more, let's call it compound interest in more ways than a financial. And this is just a pure and beautiful depiction of that, Bidemi. Thank you.
Thank you. I now because of her, I love building. I love building communities. I feel like um making the world a better place is what every second of your time. And if anyone is going down that path, if that's your path, then we are destined to meet. And I think that's why I've met you, Madonna.
Definitely, most definitely. It wasn't a chance encounter. I think it was definitely a destiny encounter, this
A
one.
destiny encounter, yes.
At Bidemi, just for avoidance of doubt, did you say you served in the army?
Yes. Oh, okay. So not in the way that you think. So we do this thing in
Okay.
Nigeria where when you're done with school, you do a 1 year service for your country. Okay, just one
Oh,
year. And people serve in different places. Some serve in governmental institutions, some serve in
mhm.
schools. Yeah, and I just happened to be at the Nigerian army. It was an interesting
Wow.
year. I learned a lot.
I can imagine because
Yeah, you
when you first
thought.
said that, the first instinct was the next time I see Bidemi, I had better be standing at ease or at attention. I don't know, but yeah,
No, it's
one
not
of those.
what you think. But I consider joining the army for real because I loved what I like. It was a really good year.
And it is true service above self. So yeah, that would be an interesting angle of generosity to explore altogether.
I know,
But that's
I
a conversation
know.
for another day.
Right. So, I mean, we're going into the podcast proper. So, I'm going to ask you a question, Madonna, and then you can me with your question. So, let's
Okay,
talk
go.
about your work. Like, let's talk
Mhm.
about what you're doing currently as the country co-lead, Giving Tuesday Uganda, program lead for CivSource. You have a community philanthropy program going on.
Mm.
Can you tell us how it connects?
First, I just want to say that since we're talking all things women and generosity, I think the community foundation model in and of itself has women written all around it, in the sense that it it capitalizes on solidarity, on pooling resources, which is typical of the way that women give. And the Community Foundation Incubation Program at CivSource Africa is set to be a 12-month opportunity to support the growing ecosystem of community foundations in Uganda. We had undertaken research in 2021 to explore community foundations in our landscape and what exactly, how do they operate, what motivates them to give, all things community uh, foundations in Uganda. It's a learning journey for us, but it's also even more exciting that we get to learn alongside leaders that are passionate about development in their context in Uganda. So that's briefly about the Community Foundation program, incubation program that we're running at CivSource.
Amazing. You know, I do believe that there is a focus on women, and if you could touch briefly on how women's cultural practices influence, contemporary trends in global generosity.
When I think about certain traditions and cultural practices in Uganda, specifically Toro and Ankole, what comes to mind is when in not actually Toro and Ankole, it's Bachiga in the Teso region as well. And I think more broadly speaking, there's a lot of communal economic activities, communal farming. And when I say farming, it's the entire cycle from planting to harvesting and sharing the produce at the end of it all. And communal, with those communal activities, it also meant that the social activities were held with that same spirit. And I think that embedded in all of that was the appreciation of solidarity, um, which seems to show up in the way that philanthropy, specifically when it comes to community foundations, operates. That pooling of resources, that spirit of being embedded in that community. You're not coming from the community to impose certain ideas on them or a certain agenda on them, that you're a part of them. You breathe the same air, you face the same challenges, and you're equally passionate about resolving them. So maybe that because of that tradition of doing work in a communal nature, it makes it easy to champion initiatives like community foundations because of the solidarity and yeah, because of the solidarity that they embody. And again, to say that the contemporary depiction of this would be the community foundation model, but also pooled resources. I would guess there's a lot of charity drives that are not necessarily an individual giving out of their own accord. Again, those tend to happen to date, but there's a lot of let's come together. There's this cause. Let's give through this particular channel. If it's a mobile money number, if it's through a specific representative, that we pull resources, because when we pull them together, there's more reach, there's more impact, and yeah, I think that's one of the things that shows up in our culture versus the contemporary trends in global philanthropy. The other would be paternal aunties from Toro and Ankole. No, Toro specifically, that's a region in Western Uganda where paternal aunties would give gifts to the bride. Specifically, there were milk calabashes, if I should describe them that way, called
Right.
evianzi. And they would give these gifts with instructions on how to use them and keep them safe. And I think women's giving is often accompanied by extra support. And that's a trend you tend to see in generosity lately. You receive a grant, it doesn't stop at that. There's a bit of capacity building, which, yeah,
True.
I may have some reservations on that. But yeah, a check-in, some information sessions, a bit of hand holding. So it's not just a passive gift of here, have, buy, but I'm here to walk this journey with you. There's women pursue relationships beyond the gift that they give. That's what comes to mind, Bidemi.
Well done, Madonna. And thank you for,
Mm.
really talking about the community philanthropy, the incubator program. I keep calling it community philanthropic program here.
It's okay. And so for you, Bidemi, what do you think influences the generosity of women? Factors that enable and perhaps hinder our generosity as women?
So Madonna, you realize you asked like three questions in one. But I mean, when we look at what makes women so generous, it's like discovering layers. On one hand, there are incredible strengths and values that obviously embodies their generosity, and then we have things like empathy, we have a deep sense of community, the desire to make a real difference in people's lives. These are huge motivators. These are, women have this ability to put themselves in someone else's shoes and feel compelled to help. There's a power of seeing, the impact of their generosity. I don't think it's something we can help. We really want to make a difference wherever we find ourselves, right? It could be in the smile of a child that we've helped or in the community that they've seen growing stronger, just like what you're doing. And there are practical stuff that also plays a huge role. Having the resources to give, right? You talked about some hand holding, some capacity building, things like time, money. These are big enablers, right? Having access to networks or platforms that makes it easy to reach out, that makes it easy to make a difference. When women are supported by a community that values giving, you're adding more, right? You're really causing a ripple effect. On the other side, let's talk about what's the word now? I'm thinking of something I can use. Commitment. So with things like work, family, personal challenges, personal projects, finding extra to give can be tough. So there is the willingness, but there's also some, the bandwidth, the strength, the emotional strength, mental capacity, economic barriers. We still have the, problems around wage gap. Sometimes even when the heart says, I want to give, the wallet says, how? And then we have societal norms. In Kenya, for example, femicide is still a big issue. And
Mm,
women have to deal with all this in addition to wanting to contribute to their communities.
mm.
Sometimes these things can underestimate, and it also makes people overlook the contribution of women. It makes it harder for their generosity to shine through, to be recognized. And I'm grateful for platforms like this. I'm grateful that I'm a podcaster because it allows me to share stories about my grandmother, for example, or how I just talked about my mom and Mrs. April who contributed to my life. And I'm hoping someone listens to it somewhere and is inspired. Awesome that we have things on platforms like this. Facing this kind of obstacles can be discouraging, but in terms it's a mix, right? There is the internal drive and then there's the need for external support. You talked about solidarity, which is a big deal. But one thing is for sure, when women are empowered to give, they can move mountains. My question to you, Madonna, let us talk about digital platforms and social media. A tweet can spark a movement. I mean, hashtag Giving
Mhm,
Tuesday, guys. It can unite
mhm.
people across continent. Social media have become a powerful tool for change. We're hearing a lot more
Yeah.
stories. We are empowering women. We are giving voice. I
Mm.
mean, we have different organizations that have, been created thanks to digital platforms. How have digital platforms and social media influenced the way African women participate, and lead philanthropic initiatives?
So, Bidemi, um, I
Yes.
think this podcast is going to be about solidarity, essentially, because we have to talk about women and not talk about solidarity and the way that it's expressed. And even when I think about how social media has influenced African women and the way that we participate in or lead philanthropy initiatives, it's one of the things that comes to mind because I think those platforms have eased how we express faith solidarity and in a way, we're talking about cultures of giving earlier and talking about doing work in a communal way. And that was limited to a geographic community, I would say. But social media, of course, has opened this up to global communities, I would say, and they transcend borders, they transcend color, they transcend all the things that have typically separated us. And because of the initiative or the cause that we are championing, we get to rally alongside each other and express um, a desire to help one another in that way. And that's one of the major highlights for me when it comes to the role that social media plays. And I think the other thing that I've seen social media do would be to normalize philanthropic practices that are that were typically not that were typically meant for men, I would say. Men or maybe family foundations or corporate bodies or something like that. And I'll explain this shortly. So when it came to foundations or legacy foundations, it would typically be either family foundation with a male at the head, but I think there's been growth of more female-led and um, female-led foundations or funds because of again social media and normalizing women with that are able to raise money and to run big money essentially. So from the Melinda Gates Foundation to the Nabagereka Foundation in Uganda at the moment, I think social media got us thinking beyond addressing immediate needs as women and I don't know, like the next meal for today or our daily bread issues. to thinking generational wealth, not just generational wealth, but how about my legacy as a woman? How about my interests as a woman beyond what what my family wants? What do I want to advance long after I've left? So I think it has got us in a place of thinking beyond now, and and forced us to, or opened our eyes to explore things like generational legacies that are centered on female figures. That will be one of the things that I've noticed about social media and digital platforms in the way that they're influencing the way that women give. And I think there's also been a change in perspective still around women and resources, and more trust, because then we get to showcase what we're capable of. Because with social media, you can run your campaign, of course, apart from censorships and certain apps being blocked in some countries or something like that, but from the political issues that may arise from that, you have a certain level of control around the narratives and how you shape them. So women have the opportunity to show the impact that their giving is doing, and perhaps increase the trust that's accorded to them in this philanthropy space.
Honestly, Madonna, I hear you. I mean, I feel like while social media has its cons, due to cyber insecurity, cyber bullying, I feel like social media has opened our eyes to many possibilities. I mean, now I know I can be anything because I've seen women becoming powerful, right? Running campaigns, giving in such big ways.
Mhm.
And it has really eliminated barriers. It has given us a platform to show help, receive help across different
Mhm.
countries, even. So thank you for sharing your thoughts on this. I think this is where you hit me again and I try to answer your question.
This is not hitting, but Bidemi, we've talked about the ways that women give, and maybe it's not so direct, but the things that we're learning about us as women, and about the way that we approach philanthropy and generosity altogether. What patterns have you noticed in the ways that women give?
I think one of the beautiful patterns for me is, and I'm going to say something we've been saying from the beginning of this podcast, the principles of solidarity and sisterhood. Women tend to approach generosity not just providing support, but as a way to build and strengthen. We are beginning to see platforms that ensures women have access to opportunities, right? And there is strong emphasis on relational giving, creating and deepening connection between the giver and those that they are supporting. Um, this approach is fostering a sense of belonging, a sense of family, a sense of community, which is very powerful. In terms of patterns, also, I think women often prioritize causes that have direct impact on people they care about as well. So there is that trend, right? There is also this trend of supporting education, supporting access to opportunities, supporting healthcare, supporting initiatives that are aimed at empowering girls, adolescents. And this is me speaking because I'm a women's empowerment advocate. I speak on menstrual justice. So probably I'm a little biased with this particular pattern, but I feel it reflects a deep understanding of what women consider as one of the rarest and biggest forms of generosity to them. And it has never been about the money. And I find it very interesting because when this particular question really makes me think. Something else I think I can speak to is collaborative giving. Women are likely to join circles, giving circles, where they can pull resources
Mhm.
together. And I knew you talked about this earlier on. It is
Mhm.
something, wherever there are spaces of collaborative giving, you will find a lot of women there. You will find
Yeah.
a lot of women in such spaces. So, I mean, sisterhood, solidarity, collaboration, these patterns have influenced contemporary philanthropy. It has also given a rise to more inclusive, more community focused models, just like you mentioned. I mean, for me, three things: solidarity, sisterhood, and strategic collaboration. And I feel like a lot of organizations are seeing this trend and trying to tailor what they're doing to reflect this patterns.
Bidemi, that's powerful. I think we should change the name of this podcast to something to do with solidarity. Just saying.
Right. I know.
Because they're inseparable. I think it's part of our DNA, and we can't help but work that
But
way. I don't know
gay.
if it's an environmental thing in the sense that the situation calls for it, or it's something that we are wired to do. But yeah,
Right.
it's definitely a lifestyle.
Well, I do have a question for you.
Sure,
And I think
Bidemi.
this is my last question. I promise.
Mm, okay.
What is the role of women in leading and innovating the culture of giving?
Um, I think I'll just sum it up in one thing that I think we're really good at and that we have the opportunity to do as women because I think it's changing, yes, that women are no longer as overlooked, but of course there's still work to do in that regard. But in that space of being underestimated and cast out, it's a very interesting place to dream and to conceptualize what freedom can look like. And it's in such a place that we need to tap into the gift of dreaming and imagination. And the beauty about when women imagine and dream things is that it's usually followed by a work ethic and the necessary support from the sisterhood to actually make things happen. So there's so many shifts in the philanthropy and development space that are happening. And I think that it's at this point that it would be good to just step into our radical imagination skills wherever that child in you is, I guess, because children are really have wild imaginations. So to tap into that inner child, that inner girl, and just dream as big as possible and dream dreams that are not restricted by the current circumstances, by the traditional ways of doing things, restricted by the limited access to resources, by all the limitations that we're currently faced with. That's the whole point of dreaming, to go beyond. And I think our role in this case is, again, not just to dream, but to follow through with the work ethic to make giving more impactful, more humane, a more clear and true expression of Ubuntu, a more clear expression of our relational nature over our transactional nature as women, for giving to speak to the need and not to our self-interest. It's really, I feel that our role in all of this is to dream and to work to follow that dream. And one of the things that comes to mind is a quote from a book by, I think it was Adrienne Brown. And in this quote, she's calling us to sort of dream, and she seems to state that what we're living in is more of science fiction. Yes, I believe that all organizing is science fiction and that we're shaping the future we long for and have not yet experienced. I think our role is first to dream and to fictionize this thing, but also to follow it with the work ethic and to tap into the support that we have in the sisterhood to shape this future that we long for but have yet to experience.
Hmm.
That's it.
Wow. I need that book.
We'll be sending one right to you.
Thank you. So I think you have just one more question for me. And so we are
Okay.
fair and square, I believe.
So, in the spirit of dreaming, Idemi, I'd
Yeah.
like us to take a walk or a flight into 20 years into the future. Picture 20 years into the future. What are your hopes and aspirations? for the capabilities or the role of women in the field of philanthropy?
I do have a dream, Madonna. 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, even. I'm not just in philanthropy, to be honest, but just as us women.
Yeah.
My dream is that we are not seen as an exception. You know, when women do things, it's not a surprise anymore. It's normal, right? I really look
Mhm.
forward to such a world where women are not beneficiaries in, for the lack of a better word, but more participants, more creators. And when you talked about women dreaming as big as they can, I smiled because I like to call myself the ambitious sister. When I think of a project, I go way big. I think about what could be, what could happen, what would happen if this blew up, what would happen if this happens in different countries. That's
Mhm.
just how I am. And dreaming is free. So I don't stop dreaming. And I really would love a situation where women know that when they do dream and if they work towards it in any form or way, dreams do become reality. I dream that women from all corners of the globe, from every background you can think of, I dream that they are at the forefront, driving innovation and making decisions that affect the future of giving, that affects generations to come. I hope to see women's voices being validated, being amplified, being celebrated, and yet not as exceptions, but as the norm, as a normal thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, I would like a situation where they are no longer underrepresented communities and a future where empathy, collaboration, community focused solutions are at the heart of philanthropy. It's inspired by the way women naturally approach giving. So these are things that I dream of. That is what I see happening. So yes, I am very ambitious and I'm not scared of dreaming. I'm dreaming it and I hope to God this happens. You know, that the dream, that the mission of Giving Tuesday to achieve radical generosity, that world, I think it's possible.
And I hope that the universe is listening to this podcast and somehow aligns to make this happen.
I hope
And that
so
all the
too.
women that are listening in will be moved to make this happen in one way or another.
I hope so too. I really do. I love how this handout really amazing. And it also gave me a lot of things to think about. I'm going back to the drawing board and I'm like, let me look at this dream again. Am I dreaming
Mm,
big enough? Yes.
yeah. Yeah, that we don't lose that sense of wonder, surely.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Madonna. Thank you for
Thank you,
honoring this
Brittany.
invitation.
And for co-hosting slash co-visiting the community
I
podcast.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the usual way I do podcast at all. This is the first,
Yeah.
not the first time really, but I'm rarely on the hot seat answering questions.
Mm,
So, everyone, as we wrap up today's episode, we are reminded of the incredible power of generosity, especially when it comes from the heart of a woman. Thank you for joining us on this journey of inspiration and empowerment. Until next time, keep giving, keep inspiring, and let's all invest in women to accelerate progress. Bye, everyone. Three, two, one.